Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Bowman Color Team Sets, where we're going to take a look at the collection of players from each team featured in the 1953 set and see what they were up to during that 53 season. Today we're going to take a look at the New York Giants, who in 1953 would take a pretty unique trip across the world to play a completely different Giants team. But before we get into that, let's take a look at the cards themselves. Okay, so first up is the very first card in the entire set, number 1, Davy Williams of the New York Giants. Really tricky card. As is often the case with these 50s sets, the very first card can be pretty pricey. Next up is Al Dark, one of the portrait cards in this set. Al had a pretty good season at the plate, 300 average and 88 RBIs. He also incidentally pitched one inning of a game and ended up with an 18.00 ERA. Here's Don Mueller. Don had an excellent season in 53. He had a 333 average and 60 RBI. This is the heyday of baseball in New York. 3 baseball teams. New York Giants, big logo on his jersey there in the Polo Grounds. Just excellent card. Here's Jim Hearn. Jim did not have such a great season. He was 9-12 with a 4.53 ERA. But putting that aside, I love all the details. Look at him rubbing up the baseball here, and you can see a few players warming up behind him in the background. As I often say, the joy of this set is found in the details. Now here's an absolute classic card. Probably the best card among the Giants, Monty Irvin. Just a wonderful pose. Irvin also had an excellent season. He had a 329 average with 97 RBI. Great smile, great pose. Never get tired of looking at this card. Okay, Leo the Lip, Leo DeRocher, the manager of the Giants. Controversial figure in baseball among the Giants, the Dodgers. Classic pose for the manager there. And next up is Sal the Barber, Sal Magley. Handful of pitchers in this set. Sal was called the Barber because he loved throwing high and inside to his opponents, giving them a close shave. Definitely looks like he's about to do that in this shot. Alright, one of 2 Al Corwin cards in this set. That's right, there's actually 2 of the same guy, and there's a lot of debate as to why that is. If you're interested, I'll post a link below to a video I did a few months back on why there are 2 Al Corwin cards. Here's Whitey Lockman, first baseman. On the original uncut sheets of this set, when they were being printed, this card was a corner card, so really tricky to find centered, and was happy when I found this one. And here's that other Al Corwin to round out the set. So there you have it, the complete 1953 Bowman team set of the New York Giants. Okay, so in 1953, the Giants would post a 70-84 record and would end up 35 games behind the Brooklyn Dodgers by the end of the season. They endured all of it without Willie Mays, who was in military service at the time during the Korean War. Of course, Willie and the Giants would get their way the following year when they would bring home the World Series championship in 1954. The last to be won by the franchise while in New York City. But despite their lackluster record in 1953, something interesting occurred after the season that had international implications for the Giants and for the country on the whole. On June 29, 1953, the New York Giants president Horace Stoneham conditionally accepted an invitation from Shota Yasuda, president of Japan's Yomiuri Shimbun newspaper, to play a series of exhibition games throughout the country of Japan. One of the teams the Giants would play would be Yasuda's Giants, a powerhouse in Nippon professional baseball. So the New York Giants received the go-ahead from the federal government, but initially, powers that be in the majors were not on board with this trip. It took a meeting and a vote amongst the owners during the All-Star game in Cincinnati that year to finally confirm the trip. The reason for the holdup was pretty simple. There were rules in place which had forbidden groups of players to participate in post-season barnstorming, rules that went all the way back into the dead ball era and which various players and entrepreneurs had pushed back against from time to time over the years, including the great Bambi himself, Babe Ruth. So now, the postseason rule was lifted, and the New York Giants were off to Japan to take part in the exhibition series. The Giants left San Francisco on October 9th for Hawaii, where they would play a few games before flying to Japan. Alright, so without getting too deep into this, it's fair to say that Japan was still in a state of transition in the 1950s, recovering from World War II and looking to head in new directions. Both Japan and the United States were trying to find ways to get on the same page and to connect with each other both diplomatically and economically. So a goodwill baseball tour, a sport that both countries love, was one way to push things forward. Led by manager Leo DeRocher and future Hall of Famers Monty Irvin and Hoyt Wilhelm, the Giants would face Japanese teams that included players who would end up in their version of the Hall of Fame. In total, the Giants played in 14 exhibition games all over Japan and finished with a 12-1-1 record. So, on paper it sounds like it was kind of a lopsided affair, and I'm sure the competitive spirit between the teams was pretty heightened, but ultimately these games were really not about winning or losing. Okay, so that about does it for this episode of the Bowman Color Team Sets. Hope you guys enjoyed taking a look at these New York Giants cards and this interesting trip that they took to Japan. Thanks so much for checking out the video, guys. Really appreciate all of your comments and conversations that come up from these videos. And I'm going to go ahead and get started on the next one. So until then, I'll see you guys around YouTube.